Hello everyone and welcome to the Talking Stick Show. So I have a special guest with us this morning, Craig Eddington. Hello Craig.
Hi Dale, how are you doing?
I'm good, thank you brother, how are you?
Yeah, great, thanks.
Good. And we've realised that we are close to each other as well, so I'm sure we'll be meeting up in the future.
Like I say, I've been aware of you for quite a long time and lots of mutual friends, and then just from chatting to a mutual friend yesterday, I found we were quite close to one another. So yeah.
Synchronicity has brought us here, brother.
Right.
So tell the listeners a bit about yourself, Craig, and what you do.
Right. Okay. So my name's Craig Eddington, and I work in sound therapy and sound healing. So I've been doing that for the last 5 years or so. And prior to that, I was doing some life coaching work, and I started off life as an electrical engineer. So sort of dealing with energy and frequency and, the mechanics of how things work was a big thing to me. So the human body's like a big machine. So that's a bit about my background. I've come from quite a practical, scientific sort of background. And then through life changes, I think we all come to the work we do when we're doing this type of work through different events happening in our lives. And so through some of those different events, sort of progress more onto the sort of more spiritual and healing path, if you like. So like I say, I've got two main brands at the moment. So the Soul Shine Life, which sort of grew out of the coaching. So that was helping people to align their lives with the type of life they wanted to lead. So that was how the Soul Shine Life came about. And then when that sort of started to morph more into the sound healing, set up another brand, which was the sound therapy company, which is more, so it just keeps that slightly separate from the other work.
Okay.
But there is a lot of crossover as well.
So what was life like for you growing up then, Craig, through your eyes? What was it like growing up in this world we call planet Earth?
Yeah, wow. I was fortunate. I grew up in a loving family environment. My parents are great. And looking back, we didn't always have a lot of money, but it was always a fun, creative time. Felt very nurturing, felt very loved. We used to spend a lot of time out in nature, used to go on camping trips all the time. So the natural world was quite a big thing for me. And always that sense of making the best of things and making your own fun and all, exploring. And it was a great time. Those early sort of formative years up to about the age of 10. And I grew up in a time as well when front doors were still left open, and you used to head out in the morning, and your parents said, "Come back when it's dark," and so opportunity to explore and
no Zoom back then.
Yeah, so that sounds ancient now. Those were the days. But so lots of freedom and just meeting up with people. And before technology, you just used to go out, and whoever was out was out. That was the thing. So lots of fluidity in sort of meeting up with people. You didn't just have one group of friends. It was whoever was out you ended up playing with or socializing with. So it was a fabulous time. And grew up in Saddleworth, just on the edge of the Pennines. So again, lots of hills, lots of countryside, lots of places to go off and explore and just be around nature, and so woods and streams and all that sort of thing. Yeah, fabulous time.
Lovely. And so was there any particular time where you decided you wanted to go into the sound healing journey? Was there any catalyst or anything happened in your life where you thought, the job I'm in at the moment isn't what I want to do, I want to transition and go into spirituality? Was there a crossover point in your life?
I think when we think about things like that, there are points in time, and I think people talk about the existential crises when we start to look at what life's all about. And so there has been various points in my life where that's happened. But I think we're always we're always on that journey. So like I say, early childhood was really good for me. Then sort of secondary school, when I went there, I sort of started to get this sense that I wasn't quite in the mainstream, slightly on fringes. There was, I didn't sort of hang around with the cool crew, if you like, so slightly, but I was never that far off in the fringes that I wasn't, I was never bullied or anything, or there wasn't, I was always sort of well liked, and I was fairly good at sports and that sort of thing, so that sort of kept me on the fringes. But I just had this sense that I was slightly detached from the mainstream, if you like. Okay. So I had that going through school, and then in sort of early teen years became very self-conscious for a few years, and that was quite at the time it felt quite oppressive as well, and so I could, because we sort of grew up in Saddleworth, and then as I moved out from home, moved into Oldham, which was the nearest biggest town, lots of terrace houses, and I could walk down the street and almost feel as if everybody was sort of looking out of the windows at me as I walked down the street. It was sort of quite an intense feeling of being watched, and then in later years, as I've come to do the work and then realised that was my own inner critic and self-judgment, and you just think, oh wow, that was all me. That was my own pressures and inner critic making me feel that way. That was quite a big eye opener when that happened. But so I think the journey starts a lot earlier than we realise with moments like that. And then I went through divorce and that sort of thing. So later in life, that's when this path I'm on now really started to come through. So when that difficult time was happening in my life, and it was sort of coming to an end, I started to think about, right, what are all the things I've wanted to do? I made a list of all the things that I said I was going to do one day. So I've been a musician, amateur musician, at the age of 12, and I've always thought, I'll be in a band someday. So that was the first one I did. I did cross that off the list. And then say hill walking's always been a big thing for me. So I always wanted to backpack along the Pennine Way. And so I did that. So that was 3 weeks with me, my backpack and a tent, and just taking off. And that was the time when I realised I couldn't go on with the way I was living my life at that time, and things had to change. And sort of 6 months later, I'd moved out of the family home into my own flat. And so that was the real sort of pivotal point, if you like. But just taking that time to be by myself, just walking, no real aims, realising that everything I had to survive was on my back. I had food, I had shelter. I'd taken a mobile phone just to text people to let them know I was safe. But apart from that, no interaction with the outside world as such. So that was a bit like I see that now as my pilgrimage moment of just taking that time out to just be in nature, just do something I love. And that was the time when it really was like, right, this can't carry on the way it is. So that was the big moment. So that was 2013, so 7 years ago. And
so how long did you work doing your job? How long did you work till you transitioned over?
Well, I moved at the time. I started off life as an electrical engineer, and then I got made redundant a couple of times and retrained, and it was either going to be computers or financial advice. And I actually became a financial advisor for about 10 or 12 years. And I now look upon that as the dark days. That was
the corporate days.
The reason why I made the decision at the time. But after a few years, just realised it was sort of a bad move. But hey, I'm here and I've got a family to support and everything else. And so I carried on with that for quite a while. But became disillusioned with it, especially around the credit crunch time and all, everything that was happening around then. And so I transitioned from doing pure financial advice to being a life coach. And that's where the lifestyle coaching came in, helping people set up their lives. Because people see money as a big barrier. But it doesn't have to be. And a lot of people are closer to living their ideal lifestyle than they think. So with just a few tweaks and a few changes in mindset, we can start to make steps towards living our ideal life. So that was like a stepping stone, if you like, from breaking out of corporate world into something a bit more spiritual and a bit more. I've always been interested in self-development, that type of work from being about 24. Somebody gave me a tape once and I listened to that, and that was sort of the start. So again, the seeds were probably planted a long time ago. But I suppose it's been in that place where, like say, there was family was more or less grown up, gone through the divorce and everything else. So the time was right, I think, for those to start germinating and coming through.
Yeah.
And then whilst I was doing the life coaching, myself and my partner Andrea, she's a yoga and meditation teacher. We were in Glastonbury for a weekend and staying at an ashram, and they had a gong bath on a Friday night, and we were like, oh, should we give this a try? And I was just blown away by it. And I've always been a big overthinker. There's probably, like, going back to that, everything that was in my head when I was a teenager. I was a real big overthinker. What I found was the sound really helped me to leave that behind and go off somewhere else. So I came out feeling really peaceful and tranquil, but at the same time really buzzing and energized. Like, it was like this real paradox, the two extremes, that really centered, grounded, tranquil, peaceful, but also really buzzing and energized at the same time. And that was when it was like, oh, wow, I was looking for something, but I didn't know what it was. And that was the moment that it was like, oh, wow, this is it. This is what I'm going to be doing. Those were the sort of key points, if you like, in the transition.
Lovely. Yeah, so we're going back for what you were saying, where you felt people were looking out the window. It's amazing how many people have these self-defeating programs, and they kind of subtly come into us at a young age, where we think something's a bigger deal than it's not. Is there any particular advice you'd give to people who are being defeated by these self-programs of not being good enough or not feeling good enough? It's interesting you say that. I'd like to touch and talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. I think at the time, it's about that self-awareness. That's the first step, is just having that awareness. So, yeah, unless we're aware of things, we can't take steps to sort of work through them, if you like. And I think it's that thing about not being afraid to look behind what's behind there, because what happens is that you get that initial thought or belief, and it's not always easy to look behind that. So I would say it's always worth talking to somebody or finding somebody who is used to working in that area and just expressing how you're feeling sometimes. And it's good if you can find somebody who's been on that path or been through a similar circumstance, so they can give you insight and awarenesses. Because, for me, it was that time. It was, I just wasn't aware at all that it could be anything to do with me. I didn't even know what it was. It was just this emotion, this feeling. But I think it's that thing about, I think my generation was maybe one of the last that didn't really talk about things with parents and that sort of thing. There was that culture of, like I say, I felt supported and loved, but we didn't talk about things that mattered as such. It was,
how are you really feeling today? I feel like shit. I was like, no, I'm really good, thank you. How are you?
There's still that generational gap that you didn't talk to your parents about stuff. And mates, it was still very laddish. I was never a sort of an alpha male type, but there was still that laddish culture of, not wanting to seem to be weak or whatever. So I think it's just having that courage really to speak to somebody about it, and maybe look for support systems and somebody who can help you gain a bit of insight into what it is that's going on.
Definitely. And it's like for myself, I've gone through that process of when I was younger, I didn't really talk about my feelings, or my parents didn't really talk about their feelings. So later on in life, I did the training to be a healer, then a teacher. Then my reality was kind of crashed because I still had this program inside of me where I was helping others, but I wasn't speaking about my own true feelings.
Right.
And it's in this moment of the now, I make sure that I go see a therapist and I talk to them all about the issues I've got, and knowing that it's important, even if we are teachers or healers, that we do need to talk to people, and it's okay to feel like shit. It's all right to have a bad day. And those programs in me were just like, I was ignoring them, and I was in some blissful ignorance state of being. So it's beautiful that we're going into this.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's one of the benefits, I think, as a healer or practitioner therapist, is that as we develop our professional networks, you've always got somebody to talk to. So, you've always got people that you can reach out to, or if it's just a catch up, or, things like in the more mainstream, you'd have like your supervision sessions where you've got a formal supervisor, but really they're about talking about yourself and your own process, and going through cases maybe that you're struggling with, and that sort of thing. But then you've got your less formal support of just having friendships of other people who are on the same path or doing similar work. So it's a really rich and rewarding type place to work, and it's always a personal journey as well. That's what I love about the job. Every day you're growing as your clients, and your networks are growing. So it's that peer support and that community bonding network. Really good.
That's great. So how are you finding the COVID-19 situation then, brother? How has it affected your life? And is there anything positive, is negative to come out of it? How's it affected you?
Well, we're really fortunate in that because we'd made a number of different lifestyle choices quite a while ago. We live in quite a rural, isolated area. So we've got lots of gardens, lots of walks within minutes of where we live. So in terms of our lifestyle, it's not changed it that much in terms of sort of the day-to-day. The main thing is not being able to go out, interact with other people, and to work, really, in the main changes. But in terms of lifestyle of my daily routine, it hasn't changed a massive amount. So we're really fortunate. I've got daughters. One daughter lives in Lithuania in a one-room bedsit with a boyfriend. So that's become, that was really intense for her. My other daughter lives in Liverpool in a shared house. So I'm aware that it's not easy for a lot of people, and there's people have had a lot more challenging situations than I have. So I feel really blessed to live where I do, and like I say, my lifestyle has become the norm. I think
I had that
a bit of a hermit type existence. Everybody's doing it.
I had a lot of hermit energy coming from me, and the virus kind of came about where I was like, right, I need to get out and I need to start mingling and seeing people and talking to people. So I started doing it. The next day, lockdown started happening. So I was like, I wanted to go out there, and as soon as I was out there, I had to run straight back in. So
So, but I suppose the positives is lots of downtime. So I've been able to really sit back and think about where I want to go in the future with the businesses, do a lot of the work that is on the back burner, a lot of admin, a lot of I've run training courses, so I've been really doing a lot of background work on the training courses and looking at like accreditation processes and all that sort of thing. That you generally, it takes a lot of focus, time and energy to do that work, and you don't always have that time. So that's a positive thing that's come out of it. Another big awareness was just how important that the connection through my sessions was to me. that I always knew that I enjoyed going out and connecting with people and sharing and the sound work and coming together with people in gatherings. But sometimes there's that thing about you don't always realise what you've got till it's gone. And I realised a number of years ago, one of my missions was to make meaningful connections in all areas of my life. And I realising that shared experience is quite an empowering thing for everybody concerned. And so not being able to go out and do that and going from getting together with people 4 or 5 times a week to suddenly nothing at all was quite an eye-opener into how much that time meant to me going out sharing the sessions with people. So that's something that I've really missed throughout this time.
Yeah.
So lots of time on my own, and that's good for a while. But then after 4, 5, 6 weeks, you're itching then for that connection. So I think for a lot of people, this time, the positives that have come out of it is that what's really important, it's that connection with other people and coming together and supporting each other and all that type of work. So that's just really just re-emphasise why I do the work I do. Yeah.
And bringing that sense, it does make you really feel how, like you were saying, how important community is, and really speaking to people just to kind of help each other out. And it's so important to have conversations. Even if you have families, it's so important to go out and speak to someone away from the family, totally different about your troubles, because sometimes you can be a bit stuck in the same scenario. I'm not saying there's something's wrong with my marriage. It's just every single body needs to be able to go out there with none of the family, just friends, and be able to chat and just talk about different things and switch off.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So, and I think it's important that it's not always family and friends. So having a space where you can share and open up honestly without fear of sort of repercussions, I suppose. Or oh, just hang on. I think I've got a delivery now. Hang on a minute. All right. Yeah. Thank you.
We'll keep that in.
I was doing a video in the garden. I had a delivery, but I heard him knock on the door twice, and then I thought he'll go away in a minute, and then he coming in. Hello.
I left my phone on loud on my live meditation the other day, and someone rang me halfway through. The ringer started going. I was like, "Oh God, just surrender."
So that having that safe space. So I think partly, our job as healers, if you like, is creating that space that people can come into and be completely honest and open, and know that it's a sacred space. Nothing's going to go any further, and that we that's what we do. We've heard the stories from lots of other people. And we're used to being in that situation and holding space for people as they're going through their process.
So for the listeners, in your perspective, Craig, what is sound therapy and healing?
We're predisposed to respond to sound and rhythm, and I think a lot of the science is that it goes back to prehistoric days, Neanderthal days, before language. When our communication would have been more tonal and utterances rather than language. And I know there's a lot that rhythm became a lot more important when we became bipeds, and when we started moving around on 2 feet, and maybe because we had 2 free hands then and we could bang things together. But rhythm at that time, that's when it became a lot more important. So there's this deep subconscious affinity with sound and rhythm. So what we do in sound healing is use those neural pathways that are there, those deep subconscious pathways, to take and use sound and rhythm to take people into different states of awareness. And that's called different things like altered states of consciousness, or, the shamanic journey state, or different modalities have slightly different ways of phrasing it, non-ordinary realities, those type of things. But it's really just taking our brains and our bodies into slightly different states than we would normally be in. That opens up different perceptions and insights for us. And it allows us to tap into our subconscious mind, the more intuitive self, that inner wisdom is able to come through when we're in these slightly different states of being.
Okay, so how does sound healing work, integrating the mind, body, and the spirit all together?
Well, we respond because sound is a physical vibration, so it's a mechanical energy, if you like, and it moves through the air. So without movement, there is no sound, because sound is a vibration. So something has to be moving or resonating initially to create the sound waves. And it's interesting that sound is just a vibration that we can hear. So there's lots of vibrations out there that we can't, they're not in our auditory range. But the ones that are in our hearing range, we call that sound. We label it as sound, but it's a vibration. So there's lots of other vibrations out there within the universe and the cosmos and everything else, but we can't necessarily hear them. But it's a physical energy. So in terms of, it's a sort of, sound is a type of energy healing. But especially the ones that are in the auditory range, they're very easy to sense, both physically on the body. So we get the vibroacoustic, which is the actual physical vibration that we can sense in and around the body, or with instruments, if you place them on the body, you can feel the resonances, or if you're using a drum close to somebody, you'll feel that resonance. So like the drum and the gong are very powerful in terms of the vibroacoustics. And then we get the psychoacoustic effect, which is how it affects our brain waves. So using certain techniques, we can lower our brainwave state. So it takes us out of our normal thinking beta brainwave state, the logical mind, into those alpha and theta brainwave states, which are our more creative, our more subconscious, it takes us more inward, if you like, into the body. And that releases different chemicals in the brain, and which then in turn, when our brainwaves slow down, our heart rate, our breathing slows down, and we go into this natural deep relaxation. So that's our relaxation response. It's a perfectly natural state to be in. And so, there's lots of physical benefits. So it balances the nervous system, improves blood flow, reduces blood pressure. So it gives our internal organs time to do its repair work, its rejuvenation work. So in terms of that mind-body connection, it's always present, but sound works both from a physical aspect, that vibrational aspect, and also the psychological aspect of it as well. So it's a really good tool for bringing the mind and body into balance.
Beautiful.
The core of what we do is that relaxation response. So we're bringing the mind and body into one state of being tranquil and relaxed, and you can feel that energetically in the body. So it just really helps that synergy between the mind and body.
It can give a lot of people, like for me when I was younger, one of my favourite moments was just on my skateboard listening to electronic music, and not many people were listening to like all these the electronic music back then, and all these sounds, and I was like, how am I listening to this sound? Like, because this mainstream radio and TV, and I was listening to all this electronic music and listening to all these instruments, and it's amazing that for me it was able to really get me out of my head. And for a lot of people, I've noticed a lot of my family members, when they play music, they just change and they can actually relax and calm down, and they can be themselves and have a bit of fun. That music kind of acts as a medium for them to be able to actually let down and be there as a spirit and enjoy the moment, type of thing.
Yeah, definitely, yeah. And if you think, like I say, how we use music, so, if we want to feel lively and upbeat, we'll put on a pumping track. If we're feeling a bit melancholy, we've got songs that we maybe go to, or if you're just wanting to chill out, some people will go to maybe music or something that's a bit slower. So, and also the Mozart effect, where apparently if you listen to classical music, we start to our cognitive function improves, so we can start to behave a bit more intelligently. So, but and if you think about movies and film tracks, you know, if you watch a horror scene without the music in the background, and I think there are clips of this on YouTube, that they're hardly scary at all. They're just images. So it's the sound behind that's creating part of that energy. So we use music, to help us get into different states anyway. And then what we do with sound healing, we're taking music and deconstructing it, if you like, into more simple sounds and rhythms. So just bringing it down to its core level.
Beautiful. So your journeys, so all the events you have, do you want to tell us a little bit about what goes on at these? Say if I'm going to go to a gong session with you, what goes on and how do you facilitate the space? How do you get yourself ready? So on and so forth.
Yeah. The process for me starts with setting up. So I know some people go through quite a lot of ritual or ceremony before the sessions. And for me, setting up the space, setting up my instruments, and I'm always really mindful when I'm setting up. So that is partly setting the space from my own point of view as a practitioner. So that's the first point. And then always trying to arrive early so that I've got time once I've set up. There's nothing worse than trying to set up as people are arriving and you're trying to greet people and set up. So trying to be there as early as possible and then just taking a few moments for yourself. I just tend to prime the instruments, so I'll just give them all a little play or a tap or just to sort of settle them, and that's part of my grounding process as well. If I get time, I might just sit quietly by myself for a while. I don't tend to, in public sessions, burn sort of incense or sage or anything like that, partly because I've had quite a few requests from people who don't necessarily like that, or they have asthma or things like that. So for me, I'll do it more in a private ceremony, or if everybody's aware of it, or in certain situations, but in the general public ones, I don't tend to do that. So it's more about me setting the space for myself. And then people come in, and in the relaxations is the core of what I do. So the mats will be laid out. People will bring cushions and blankets, just make a little nest, get as comfortable as they can. And they basically lie down and chill out for 45, 50 minutes while I go through the sound bath process. So my sessions are the majority of them are fairly gentle. The group sessions, unless it's specifically themed to be more energizing. So again, people will be aware of that beforehand. But yeah, relaxation is, from my perspective, that getting into that natural relax state, that relaxation response, the parasympathetic nervous system, that is sort of the starting point for any of the work that I do. So the core of my group sessions are about helping people to drop into that, de-stressing as the first point in the process. And then if people are more are drawn to it, they'll come, they'll ask questions, and then we might move on to doing smaller group sessions, but either more energizing. I do a few workshops around things like the healing process, or transcending blockages, or creating a life of ease, peace and joy, opening up creativity. So there's lots of different sessions we can then move on to. And then I suppose as you go further down that line, there's the working on the one-to-one basis as well, then, which is working a lot more tailored sessions, a lot more on the individual, and helping them to go through their process with a combination of using sound and also my life coaching techniques. So that's, we tend to work, I've got things like wellness plans that help people to go on to like a self-healing blueprint, if you like. And then the lifestyle plan as well, which is a bit more looking at the whole life. So we maybe start off on the individual, and then you can start to look at the life plan as well. So there's lots of different ways of working and tailoring it for different clients.
So let's go into a bit about the instruments you play then, Craig. Tell us a bit about what goes on and what you're playing in these sessions.
Okay, the relaxation sessions, like I say, everything's kept fairly gentle. So I'll tend to start off with something like a singing bowl, Himalayan singing bowl. So these are quite subtle sounds, and but really long, continuous sound. So what happens is our brainwaves tune into the frequencies that it's hearing, the tones that it's hearing. So these long, continuous sounds, the brainwaves sort of synchronizing with those. Your brain, that's what lowers the brainwaves. Then they start to drop down. So I'll use singing bowls for the first 5-10 minutes, just to get people into a nice, relaxed state, and then I generally transition through to the gong. So I'll move on to the gong, but again, people always think the gong's going to be really crashy and harsh, and it can be, but it depends on the techniques you use and how you play it. So in my relaxation sessions, it's more about creating this long flowing soundscape. So it's so it's like almost like a pad that just spreads out. So it's kept really gentle, but we call it blossoming of the sound, so that it just starts to expand, and we just keep an underlying theme going. And then we might put some more energetic elements on top of that with the gong. But generally, like I say, in the relaxation session, it's nice and gentle. And then I'll transition onto other instruments. So quite often it'll be crystal bowls or a crystal pyramid. And then we'll finish with percussion. So, rattles, shakers, that type of thing, just to help bring the person back out of that deeply relaxed state. So we've got to bring them back round to consciousness, because quite often people have then got to travel home, so we can't leave them too spaced out. So that tends to process. But they say the relaxation session is really nice and gentle, so they're a good introduction for anybody who hasn't tried it before, just to see if it works with them. If that type of session resonates with them.
And you do quite a few sessions all around Yorkshire, don't you? There's quite a few areas you've been to and spread the sound journey healing.
Yeah, so when I first started off, I didn't have my own space at the time, so I built the business for the first 2 or 3 years around taking it out. So in the first months of how am I going to do this, I literally emailed every yoga studio, every martial arts centre, every group I could think of, and say, oh, look, this is what I do. Do you fancy having a taster session?
Yeah.
And unfortunately, every session I went to, it was just so well received that people would say, oh, when you're coming back? So it sort of grew naturally from there. So that initial 6 to 12 months, there was a lot of work in making the connections and getting it going. But then it started to sort of build and take on a life of its own. And so I have lots of, from how I started the business, I've got lots of venues throughout Yorkshire. So South Yorkshire, go down as far as Sheffield and Chesterfield, and down there, that's about as far south, all the way through Huddersfield, Harrogate, and coming around to Ripon, Thirsk, and even as far as sort of Scarborough and that side. So within about an hour and a half's travel from York, if you put a pin in York, and about an hour to an hour and a half, that's sort of generally where the sessions are held. And then further afield by sort of special arrangement, really.
So I saw on your Facebook that at the moment you're doing some sessions, social distancing in the garden, I see. Yeah. How's that going?
Yeah, well, we've had this fantastic run of really good weather, and then I had to cancel one last night because of rain and the way the weather had gone. But yeah, the small groups, and the thing again that's with social distancing, I find it really awkward because I'm a big sort of hugger, and so when you're greeting people and they're coming into sessions and you're like, oh no, don't come,
don't touch me.
Yeah, 2 meters, stay there. So it's slightly surreal in that respect, but it's fantastic to be meeting up with people and doing these activities again and sharing. So I've done a lot of sort of just catching up with people and sort of treatment swaps, if you like, and so that's been good. So I've got a few more bookings for next week. So I'm just hope the weather will be a bit kinder again.
Yeah, we had a great spell.
Just nice to get back to some sort of normality and, like I say, start using the techniques for other people again.
Beautiful. So So for those people who are wanting to start out as therapists, teachers, Craig, what's your advice for them starting and setting up? For anyone listening who's wanting to go into this, what's your advice for them?
Okay. Well, I think we've sort of touched on it a bit already, but one of the things is to use whatever you've been through as sort of the starting point. So the challenges that you've faced and overcome gives you unique insight into certain situations and helps you be more compassionate with people in that situation. And you might have tools that you've developed yourself to get you through that period. So I think using what you've used yourself and what you can directly relate to, the things you have direct experience of, that's a good starting point. So there's this idea that your hurts becomes your gift sort of thing, and that the other one was about be the person that you would like to have met when you were in that place all those years ago. So that I think that's a good starting point. And then you've touched on as well about doing our own work, so that if we have to have gone through our own process to be of real benefit to anyone else. And that process never stops. So we never get to the point where like, all right, I've finished, I can be a healer or a therapist now. It's always, you're always in that, you're always on that journey. But you have to be in a point where you can sort of box that off, if you like, so that if you're working with a client and something around your process is triggered, you have to be able to go, oh yeah, that's my stuff. I'll put that in a box and I'll open it later once the client's gone.
There's so many people who have therapy sessions who go away with traumas from their therapist. So them projected on, and they never had it in the first place. So they've got this. So it's like seeing healing as not just an event. A lot of people see healing, say, if I went to one of your sessions, I'd go to that once a month and that's it for me. I'm done. I'm healed. I'm all good. It's not just that. It's a process, like you were saying, of every day going through that process of self-nurturing yourself, taking care of yourself, looking after the body, the mind, the spirit, using the sound healing, all the methodalities of healing to be able to feel good, and doing that on a daily basis and knowing when to step away from healing. Because for me, I kind of got a bit unbalanced because I was doing all things spiritual and I wasn't being a human being. So I've had to go, right, I'm going to go do something completely not spiritual now, just to balance myself out a little bit. So grounding, that's why I was saying the grounding part is really important. So, and that's why it's always the first thing that I do with people is the grounding element. Because like I say, if you do too much of that, the higher vibrational work, you can become ungrounded yourself. So especially as a therapist, there's that thing about being able to hold the space and be grounded and centered yourself. And like I said, not projecting onto the client. And also there's a term called co-regulation that happens. So, we naturally tune into other people's energies. So if you show up in the right energy for that client, they will start to pick up on that energy and go away. So let's say if the therapist or the practitioner can project their energies onto a client sometimes. So it's, being mindful of that. Yeah, that's it. And being mindful and just knowing that it's human, it's the nature of humans. That's what we are, and forgiving it and accepting it for what it is.
Yeah. So that's thing. And I think as well with that, if you're looking at becoming a healer, knowing that the healing, the person who's coming, the participant or the practitioner, the client, is the one who does the healing. So as a practitioner, we're providing a space for them to come into and to do their healing. So it's not that you have this superpower that and you're going to heal the person.
I'm going to heal the world.
So it's creating that space where they can come into and go through whatever process they need to go through, feel safe, feel nurtured, and listen to, feel heard, and you're creating that space for them to come in and go through their own process and do their own healing work. So I think those are probably the two big things that I would say as a starting point.
Brilliant.
And then obviously their training and everything else is important. Yeah.
So blockages, Craig. You say you're doing courses on spiritual blockages. What is your perspective on blockages, and just a kind of a quick outline of how we can overcome these blockages and understand them?
Yeah, well, I think going back to things like Chinese medicine, particularly, they have this belief that any disease, whether it's even physical conditions, have a root in emotion, and if we have situations which we're not able to express, which is part of our processing, they become stored within the body, and they create almost like, if you think of things like knots in the system. So all our body has networks. We've got our veins and our neural networks, our what's called the nervous system is what I was thinking of. So yeah, we have all these systems in the body, and they're all like lines or pipes, but through emotions and through energies that are stuck within the body, you can think of these as knots or kinks in the pipework. So it doesn't allow our natural energies to flow. So there's talk of either chi or prana or vital life force energy. And if we've got all these blockages in the body, our natural energy isn't able to flow. So what we're doing is looking to move these stagnant energies and release them. And we can do that through either physically movement, so tapping, stretching, massaging, shaking. So animals naturally shake when they've gone through a traumatic experience. So if we're not able to do these sorts of things in the moment that a traumatic experience happens within the body, or if we're facing challenges in our life and we can't speak up about them, we suppress them. Again, that's holding these energies in, and it's not a healthy thing to do. They're stuck in the body, and we're not always aware of them. That can be a very subconscious process. So just with the sound has this knack of actually stimulating or agitating these energies, if you like, so they can help bring balance and flow back into the body and help us to release. And the release can sometimes be quite emotional and cathartic and very obvious, but sometimes it can be really subtle, like somebody will just get an idea. I've had quite a lot of people who just said, I just got this sense that, I can leave that behind now. It was just a really gentle thought. And just that thought is a form of release. So you can go from very subtle releases up to the more emotional and releases. But I think I've maybe drifted off the point a bit. But I can't remember the original question. So blockages. So yeah, it's just that process of getting the energies flowing again and creating that calm and inner peace and balance that allows the body to feel. Again, it's about the body feeling safe. When the body feels safe, different processes happen in the body. When we feel unsafe, we get adrenaline and cortisol and all those chemicals released, hormones released into the body, and our body feels unsafe. It goes into a place of feeling unsafe. So again, it's the mind-body connection. We're trying to develop that mind-body connection and make it all feel integrated, coming back to the whole self, feeling centered, balanced.
And that's it. So when I've gone through drumming, so for me, drumming really helps me. When I'm out, I can drum quite loud, and I can just do it for a while. And for some reason, I'm able to get out of my head, out of myself, and there's so many times where I'll just want to cry because I'll have all of this stuff blocked in me through the last few weeks and things what have happened, and I'll get this sense of the drum will take me on the journey and help me fully release and get out and be a spiritual being. And I've had those moments where I've just cried or just felt this deep gratitude or this deep peace. It's like it's connecting to the universal orchestra when I'm connecting to this musical energy. It's different for a few people, but what's for your perspective, the drum? Let's talk a little bit about the drum, because the drumming is something so it means a lot to a lot of people. So let's just go on a little bit about the drum.
Yeah, well, I think if you look at the qualities of the drum, very sort of primeval is what comes through. That everybody, even when they play a drum, they've never played a drum before. You put a drum in the hand and they're like, oh, wow, there's that sense of having done this before, of knowing what to do. And the sounds are very earthy and grounding. And a lot of people want to use the voice naturally. As soon as they start to drum, they want to use the voice. With other people, it's movements. Other people really, I've tried to do drumming sessions sometimes, sat down in a circle, and then people say, I want to get up. So some people naturally feel that they have to move. Others, I tend to feel really grounded and centered. So I tend to sway when I'm playing the drum, but not necessarily want to sort of dance around. But different, like I say, slightly different for different people.
Yeah.
But I think the symbology of the drum as well, that again, that wholeness, they tend to be more rounded shape. So again, the whole cosmos is in there, and I know with shamanism and the medicine wheel, it's all that, the circle of life and everything else. But yeah, so and again, you get the rhythm of the drum, but also you can, when you do the shamanic beat at sort of 180 beats per minute, the drum starts to sing. So I don't know if you've ever noticed that. You get that tone behind it. It's like a continuous tone.
Yeah. My wife was recording it and she was like, what's that noise with the drum as well? There was like two tones going when I was doing it.
Yeah, so that's amazing. So that's another benefit. So you get the long continuous tone and the drum beats as well. But yeah, I think it's really primal, really grounding. And I think with instruments, with the sound healing, there's a few basic concepts that run through it all. And different instruments achieve the same state, but through different effects. So with the drum, it's very much rhythmic, and that drone tone that you get. So it's a different type of session, but it's getting you again to center, to ground, and then maybe take you to those connection. When we start to, once we're centered and grounded, we can a lot with the heart space. Dropping into that heart space, and then once you've done that, you can connect to the external world more as well. The more spiritual world, anything that's greater than you. But yeah, I think the drum in particular has a real connection with nature, and that, like I say, that primal, ancestral feeling, definitely. Yeah.
And it's interesting that say we go back to when we were born as a fetus. The first noise we hear is our mother's heartbeat. Then, when we come out of the birth canal, so to say, the baby starts crying and listening for the mother's heartbeat. So basically, I've had a few children in the past. In the last birth, we had a Lotus Birth, and just to how this connects with the heartbeat and the heartbeat of the planet and so on. So basically, when Opal was born. She was born with the placenta attached on, and humans naturally drop it off in about 3 weeks. And the process behind doing this is to allow the baby straight away with the placenta to connect to Gabrielle, the mother's heartbeat. So straight away when it comes from the heartbeat and hears all the earth, it's in the 3D world, it's crying and listening, where's the heartbeat again? Mm-hmm. So what the Lotus Birth does is it connects them straight away to the mother's heartbeat, so they can feel the heartbeat again, and they're nurtured. And for me, it's kind of like going through that rhythm of going back to the birth canal, going back to the heart of the earth, the mother and the earth. It's like you say, the DNA starts activating, doesn't it, when you go through these journeys?
Definitely. And like I say, it's the first thing they do is pick the baby up and put them on the chest there so they can hear the heartbeat, And that's the other thing as well, that as well as the heartbeat, they get all those watery, whooshing sounds.
Yeah.
The pulsating of the blood. So there's rhythm, and there's those almost like moving water seascapes, because they're wrapped in the baby fluid, amniotic fluid. So there's that sense we have this almost like surreal soundscape going on whilst we're in the womb. So yeah.
Have you seen the behind of a placenta before? I'd really recommend. I've got a picture of the placenta. So if you look up what placentas actually look like, because usually they're taken away from us, is it looks like a tree of life. It's got sacred geometry, and it's magnificent. It's like, I didn't understand until we did this Lotus Birth. So anybody out there wanting to have kids, look into the Lotus Birth. We were lucky enough to get a private midwife who was at a reasonable price, who goes around from like Spain to England and does. She was trained. She worked in the NHS for 20 years, and she's now private. She's like a spiritual midwife. So we were able to get the last birth. We're not going to have any more, to have it as spiritual as possible, away from everything. And because at the first birth we had it in hospital, and the second birth we had the NHS at home. So it was great to be able to connect to that placenta and see it. I was there having to carry it around while Gabrielle was moving with it, and you're still connected to the birth. The biggest healing for me through that was I was really connected to the birth with holding the placenta. There was that, it was all fresh, and it was beautiful, man. It really was.
Awesome. Wow. Fabulous. I didn't even know you could do that, but yeah, sounds amazing.
Yeah, it's crazy. We didn't realise we could fully do it until we spoke to the lady. They have to be insured. She got insured by a hospital in Leeds. I think there's one place in Yorkshire what insures spiritual midwives. Only one place. The rest of the world frown upon it because it's not in the system and so on. So going forward, Craig. So just before we finish this, so let's talk about depression for a bit. What's your view on depression? A lot of people have depression on the earth at the moment. What's your understanding of this, and how can we help remove this depression energy and feel the natural rhythm again?
Yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with modern lifestyle and the things that are held up as being normal. And social media, I know, plays a big part in depression and anxiety in sort of teens and early life. And one of the observations I've had, that people tend to go through midlife crises, but these seem to be moving down through the generations now. So rather than it being something that happens in your 40s generally, there's a lot of people sort of 25 and 30 who are really questioning, what's life about, and going through that process a bit earlier in life, I think. And I think that's partly because, even during my lifetime, how technology has driven and modern life, and how much more disconnected we are from, like I say, I used to play out all the time outside, but with technology and games consoles and all that sort of thing, we've become a bit more insular and not going out as much. And I think the pressures of always being connected, always working, and I think that's another thing that a lot of people have looked at, is why they're working so hard, that during this downtime they felt so much better. Maybe they're working from home now, so they're not doing the commute, but how much better their daily life feels for not being in that normal routine and having the same pressures. And so I think a lot of it is a disconnection from things that really matter, and also trying to live up to standards that you can't live up to. The things on social media and everything that's put out there, that we can never reach those ideals that are put out there, that this is what our life should be about. And I think it's that depression is when we get that sense of desperation or hopelessness, or we feel that we somehow are not keeping up with everything else, with everybody else. And so I think it's a matter of, when I work with people, it's really tuning back into what's important to you as a person, and what's really important in life. And it's sort of a reframing of life, and looking at life goals and that sort of thing, and trying to find the purpose in your life, and making sure it's your purpose and not somebody else's. You're not trying to live up to somebody else's idea of what because like I say, when we're younger, we're influenced a lot, and maybe we set out on a path that wasn't necessarily our path, and we did it because we thought that was the right thing to do. Or I think again, it's about having the courage to sort of really sit down and question what you want from life, and trying to make steps. And it might not happen overnight. There might be very, very gradual steps, but at least if you have a plan that, well, this is how I want my life to be, and I'm going to start working towards that, it gives you a purpose and a sense of having some control over your life. So I think with depression, again, it's that lack of control and lack of purpose. You can't see a way out of things, a sense of hopelessness or that type of thing. So I sort of work with the sound therapy to help to get to the crux of what's underlying, help the client gain awarenesses, and then start to use some of the coaching techniques to say, well, how do we move from here to where you want to be? So that's how I work with it. I think that's probably my sort of perspective. How about yourself?
So depression for myself, I've suffered with it in the past, and there will be still days that I'll feel really kind of low. Tends to usually happen just before the full moon. There'll be like half a day where I'll just feel really, I don't want to do anything, and I have to push myself to literally go and do some self-healing or something like that. We all will experience those moments in our life. For me, it's about speaking to help with depression, about speaking to people, even having conversations. Like you said at the start, it's so important to be able to have conversations with people, talk about your feelings, how you truly are feeling. Go see a therapist, go chat to them, talk to them. And music as well, music, ceremony, spirituality. For me, the reason why I'm doing this is because it's helped me overcome a lot of shadows in my life, a lot of demons, a lot of self-defeating programs. At one point, I went into the air and had this experience, and it kind of led me into depression for around about a year's time. And there was no point, I could feel no point at all of anything. And when I started, I went to my first Reiki session, and it was like I felt something, and I was like, hang on a minute, I can feel myself. I'm a spiritual being. I'm not what the world wants to tell me what I need to be. My mum and dad telling me, you need to get a job, you need to go do this, so on and so forth. And I was just growing up, and I didn't have a clue what I was doing. I didn't want to be at school. All these teachers teaching me stuff I didn't want to learn. And it got to the point where when I got into the spirituality, it helped me open up, find friends, and know that everyone's a bit crazy sometimes. We all go through the crazy moments, and it's okay. So opening up and getting support for depression, and really pushing yourself to do the healing, because there'll be that side of yourself what doesn't want to do it. It'll be the self-defeating programs which will come into you and go, hang on a minute, no, don't do that healing. And we all have to say, no, hang on a minute, I am the soul, I am the spirit, and I'm choosing to heal. So from my perspective, getting out, doing stuff, going to sound sessions, therapy sessions, going to see you, going to see me, or going to see other people, just ask for help and get out and start doing something different, and not being stuck into that repetitive cycle of doing the same thing over and over again. If you like, every day's the same, every night's the same. You wake up, you watch telly in the morning again, go out for a walk, or go get a drum and start drumming in the woods, chanting, shouting, screaming, whatever you want to do, just a way to express yourself.
Yeah. And I think a couple of things that you mentioned there. So the cycles is another thing, that it's very easy for us to get into these cycles, and the brain has a negative bias, which is, again, for an evolutionary survival point of view, we always had to look for danger. And these days we don't always have life-threatening experiences every day. But what the brain does, it's always looking for threats. So it's very easy to get into these negative cycles. And the other word you mentioned was perspective. So trying to get a perspective, and or sometimes somebody else's perspective, handle on whatever it is you're going through at that moment.
Beautiful. And so before we close the show, Craig, how can people get a hold of you for your sessions and your courses?
Okay. So Sunshine Life is on Facebook, is probably the best place. That's where sort of everything goes. That's the hub of everything. So it's facebook.com/gongsoundbath. and that'll take you to the Soulshine Life. I do also have the Sound Therapy Company, which is on Facebook. They both have their own websites, which is the names again, so www.soundtherapycompany.co.uk or soulshine.life. And on there, obviously, there's mobile numbers and emails, but yeah, social media is probably as good a place as any. Just even though I've just been slating it, it does have its uses.
It does have its uses. So thank you so much for coming on the show, brother. It's been a pleasure to be able to speak to you and hear your perspective on everything. Thank you.
Cool. Well, no, thanks for the opportunity, and yeah, great to connect, and we'll have to do it in person very soon.
Definitely, brother. I'm interested in doing some things with you in the future, and it would be great to connect with you as a friend as well.
Yeah, cool. And it's interesting, and we've probably just scratched the surface of, there's loads more avenues you can go down with
there is, and we'll get you back on. We'll get you back on the show at some point in the future, and we'll go into those other avenues as well.
Yeah, fabulous.
So thank you everyone for watching the Talking Stick Show. If you like what you hear, please subscribe and comment. I really appreciate the feedback. So have a great day, everyone, and thank you for joining the show, Craig. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Dale. Thanks, everyone. Cheers.
Thank you, brother.
Bye.